So time management, I have talked about this elsewhere. You will find a presentation on this elsewhere, but just let me remind you very quickly about time management. In terms of how many minutes we have in the exam, we have 3 hours, 15 minutes, okay, 195 minutes. If we, and you don't have to do this, but for argument's sake, let's spend about 35 reading and planning. That leaves us with 160 minutes of those 195, okay? Or examiner meeting, and I'm going to briefly talk on how we can make sure we don't suffer under each of those headings. Yep. So time management, I have talked about this elsewhere. You will find a presentation on this elsewhere, but just let me remind you very quickly about time management. In terms of how many minutes we have in the exam, we have 3 hours, 15 minutes, okay, 195 minutes. If we, and you don't have to do this, but for argument's sake, let's spend about 35 reading and planning. That leaves us with 160 minutes of those 195, okay? The 20 professional skills marks take no time to acquire. It's about how you present things, yep? So we divide not by 100, but by 80. So if you want a rough rule of thumb, if you're spending about 35 minutes reading and planning, you're looking at about 2 minutes a mark as a budget, how you are going to deal with the SBL exam. Okay, so that would be my recommendation. So if we have a question which is 8 marks, we would multiply 2 by 8, and that would take us 16 minutes. And my advice would be that you actually write down your start and your finish time on your exam papers so that you don't delude yourself. Okay, so that would be very important from my perspective. Yep, that's what I would do. You're not going to make a mistake. But what I want to do now is show you what students do who misuse their time in the exam. So I have done this on another presentation, but you may or may not have seen it, but I think it's very important to remind you. So if we argued that, yeah, there's 3 tasks, which there always is on your exam, and we spend about 1/3 of the time on each task, this is a great student who does that. They do task 1, they stop, they do task 2, they stop, they do task 3, and they stop. Yeah. The point I would make to you, though, is that when we are answering exams, if we, what is very important is that the first or the mark score per minute is going to be higher for the first 50% than it is for the latter 50%. Yeah, so you're going to score more. You're going to get the first 50% of the marks much easier than the later 50%. So you need to put yourself in a position where you get those easy marks on task 1, task 2, and task 3. Okay, that's your job. That's what you need to do. However, in the real exam, students who don't manage their time end up like this. They start task 1, which is great, but because they don't manage their time, they can say a little bit more. I can get some more marks. And they spend a bit longer in the task 1 area. And what happens? Instead of leaving here, they go a bit further and spend a bit longer eating into the time which should have been allocated to task 2. Okay, they now start task 2. Okay, however, they start it late and they spend the allocated time for task 2, which is going well into task 3, but they still don't manage their time and they can get a few more marks on task 2 and they spend a little bit longer on there. Well, you can see what's going to happen, hopefully. They start now task 3 very late. The 3rd red line is where the exam is going to stop. So they start task 3. Unfortunately, they don't have time to finish the exam and they give a poor account of themselves on task 3. So what happens? Well, they do quite well on task 1. They get 21 out of 33. They don't do bad on task 2. They get 19 out of 33. So far, they've got about 40 out of 66, which is fine. It's a good pass. But because they didn't get those easy first 50% of task 3, because they didn't manage their time, they don't get many marks for task 3 and they get 4. So they fail with 44. Yeah, that's what they do. They get 44, which sadly is a big fail. Yeah, so it might seem pedantic, but what you have to do at the end of the time allocated is extract yourself from the exam. Because you've got enough marks. Go on and get the easier marks on the later questions. If you hang around thinking you're going to get 100%, you're deluded. Okay? So please take that on board.